This is The Clash, where the real world clashes with a true Christian worldview. Join former professional wrestler Chris Whaley, known as the Masked Saint, who is an author, pastor, and teacher that brings his wrestling skills into the squared circle and tackles real-life issues. Along with Jeff Dixon, best-selling author, internationally known teacher, leader, and pastor who is not afraid to tackle the tough issues of the world we live in. Together they form a tag team of wisdom in The Clash.
Welcome once again to The Clash. I'm Jeff Dixon. I'm joined by
Chris Whaley,
also known as the Masked Saint, and we're going to take and wrestle just a little bit with real life, real culture, and let it collide with a Christian worldview, and hopefully out of that clash come up with something good or entertaining or quasi-entertaining. I don't know. So Chris, once again, I'm glad you're with me. I hope our audience is excited about this because this is the ultimate bad episode. Now you might be thinking to yourself, why would you guys do a bad episode? And I know it's hard to believe that we could, but this is that episode. This is the How to Ruin Your Life episode.
How to ruin your life.
Now we're gonna talk about ways that if you want to ruin your life, I mean totally just blow up your existence. If you'll do the things we talk about in this first segment, you will have a terrible, horrible, no good, very bad life.
But the good news is, in the second half of the show, we're going to change that around, right?
Yeah, I don't know if I have time for that, though. I may have to check out after the first half. You'll cover the second half for me.
Okay.
So let's go ahead and jump started. I mean, these are in no particular order, but this is how to ruin your life. Okay. And so the first one, and I'm going to go off the list here. This is a way to ruin your life. Assume that your problems are unique. Assume that your problem. Have you ever met anybody who they're the only one that's had the problem that they have?
Oh, all the time. All the time, yeah. You talk to that person and you tell them something, hoping they'll be a little bit compassionate towards you, and you tell them the story, and then they say, oh, that's nothing. Listen to this.
What up your problem?
And then, yeah. So,
I think if we assume we're the only ones that have that problem, we become wallow beast. And we just wallow in our own problem, and we can never get out of it. So if you want to ruin your life, become a wallow beast, item one. Second of all, wait for someone to help you.
Right.
In other words, don't do anything. Just sit around and wait for someone to do something that's going to make your life better. Yeah. Because, laziness certainly will trash your life if you're not careful.
Yeah. And along with that, procrastination. Procrastination, that, why do it when you can keep putting it off?
Yeah. I was going to talk about that later, but I was putting it off.
Okay.
But the idea of, don't wait, just don't do it. It just wait for someone else to come along and rescue you. But, inactivity, laziness, that'll trash your life. I mean, so don't be a slug. Right. So we talk about wallabies, we talk about slugs. Okay. I don't have creatures for all of them, so I have to get really creative here. Here's the third one, and I don't know a good way to say this, but cope with your pain in a way that causes more pain.
Oh, absolutely.
I think this one would just be stupid. If you got something that's wrong in your life, for example, let's say that you're worried about money, you're stressed about money, you're in debt. How do you solve that? Go out and take on more debt, buy something you don't need, waste your money, right? I mean, just add to it. That ruins and makes worse what's already there, right? Right. So do something with your pain that adds more pain at the end. That'll do it.
Instead of comfort food, comfort money. Right?
Yeah. But comfort food could be one as well. I mean, it's always that thing that we do that really doesn't make anything better. We just do it, and it's a dumb thing to do. It's stupid. So stupidity would be be stupid. Will ruin your life. Yeah. All right. How about this one? Become fixated on immediate comfort and short-term solutions. If you want to trash your life, don't play a long game. Just go for the immediate gratification, self-satisfaction in this moment. What matters most is I want this. That's what kids do sometimes and gets themselves in trouble.
You know, I think you really you need to make a sermon series out of this. I
I think we better do it. It's better to do it in 30 minutes and just be over the pain. You know, just get it out of the way.
Can you imagine putting that on the marquee out front, though? Sermon this week: How to ruin your life.
How to ruin your life.
That would be.
It could be a long-term series, actually, because people do that all the time. I mean, I know people that do this kind of stuff, though.
Yeah.
Hopefully, our
audience
would not do this because they are a sophisticated class of people who appreciate
and passionate.
Fine teaching, fine conversation.
Excellent.
They're connoisseurs of quality.
Right.
That's who you are as part of the class. Right. But if you want to ruin your life, let me give you another one. Refuse to love others.
Right.
In order to protect yourself.
Right. Not get close to someone because you don't want to be hurt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And thinking that that's a good idea. Yeah. And you end up very empty along the way.
You know, we're all flawed human beings. We all make mistakes. And I think one of the solutions, I know we're going to look at solutions later, but giving people the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah.
Yeah. That would help a lot in that area.
You're right. Okay. Another way, if you want to trash or ruin your life, never learn how to be responsible with your money.
Oh boy, the big one. Finances. Yeah.
I mean, we know that people worry about finances, but if you never learn to use your money, you never learn to be responsible with your money, you're never going to have any money. Mm-hmm. And that will certainly trash your life. And there's some principles about that. We'll talk about that in a minute.
Yeah, but if you want to ruin your life, just don't have any plans for your finances and
go with no plan, right?
Yep, and you'll ruin your life.
And then you'll be poor and destitute.
Oh boy.
Here's another way to ruin your life. Allow your mistakes to define you forever. Do you know people who've done that?
Absolutely.
They've made a mistake and it has become their world, their defining quality. They're known for the mistakes, not the success. And they do it, right? Mm-hmm. I have failed.
Right.
And if you've ever failed and you've chosen not to move beyond it, then in some ways you've taken a powerful step toward ruining your life.
Right.
And it makes no sense, but if you want to ruin your life, be the product of your failures.
Right.
If that were the case, well, again, we'll come back and we'll talk in the second half about how to fix that. How about this? Ignore the important questions of life. If you want to ruin your life, ignore the big questions of life. Be an idiot. Mm-hmm. Just don't have a thought. Don't have big thoughts. Don't have good thoughts. Never ask the cosmic thoughts. Just don't ask important questions. Mm-hmm. You set yourself up for failure.
Right. Here's another one. How about if you want to ruin your life, just keep making the same bad choices that you do. And
that would be, idiot school, right? I mean, to do the same thing over and over again and think you're going to get a different result.
Right.
Why would it turn out any different this time than it did the time before?
Mm-hmm. Right, choices.
Good advice.
Yeah.
I remember my dad looked at me one time and I had made some bonehead choice, and it wasn't a cataclysmic boneheaded choice. Mm-hmm. But I remember him looking at me as only he could look at me, and ask the question that was so penetrating to a kid at a time that I never forgot it. He just goes, "How did you think that was going to turn out?" I mean, it was he just summarized everything I had done wrong. He didn't have to relive it with me. We didn't have to go back and litigate it. It was just, how did you think that was going to turn out?
Did you ever play Superman when you were a kid? Put a towel around your neck and
yeah.
Well, Superman was big when I was a kid, and I'll never forget. I was on the roof. We had a short roof over the carport there. And I was up there, and I had the towel around, and I was jumping off the roof. My dad pulled up in the driveway. He got out, looked. I'll never forget his words. "Okay, boy, you fall off that roof and break your leg, don't come running to me." Yeah, it was one of those.
And did you jump off the roof again? You did, didn't you?
Several times.
Of course you did. Of course you did. Of course you did.
Yeah.
Okay. Another way to ruin your life: refuse to forgive others.
Right. Unforgiveness is a killer.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
it'll ruin your life.
Festers and grows and will just become it becomes a black hole that leads your life.
Yeah.
And you know what? I mean, everybody knows what it's like to be hurt.
Yeah, but it doesn't just stop with unforgiveness. Unforgiveness turns into bitterness. Mm-hmm. And then that bitterness turns into hate sometimes.
Yeah.
And so unforgiveness can totally ruin your life.
Yeah. We got one more.
Okay.
One more way to ruin your life. Choose not to be grateful. And you just hit the word a minute ago. And be bitter. Mm-hmm. Choose not to be grateful and be bitter. There are some people who really go through life, I think, sometimes, and they're never thankful for what they have, and they never focus on what they have as a resource, and they spend all their time thinking about things they don't have, or things that they want, or things that they need. And if I just had this, I'd be happier.
Right.
You remember the movie Steve Martin was in, The Jerk?
Yeah.
Where he's walking through the house, he's leaving, so all he needs, he doesn't need anything, but all he needs is this lamp. And then, I don't need anything but this, and he picks up all this stuff, not grateful for what he's had, not grateful for what it's been, but willing just to kind of turn inward, and become so selfish and even bitter about it, because we will mess our lives up if we do that.
And people, after this episode, people are going to be going out and the church. They're going to be, people are going to go out and watch that just because of what you said.
Well, I mean, if you're a Steve Martin fan, you'll love it. If you're not, you're going to think it's one of the dumbest things you've ever seen. I came up in the era where Steve Martin was really a big deal.
Yeah, he was funny.
And was funny. And I remember seeing the theater first time and just laughing out loud as he's doing it.
Yeah.
It is a kind of over the top.
Yeah.
Dumb movie. But I think that the thing is, if you're not grateful, you become a jerk. And I think that's fair enough.
That's right.
I think for us, I mean, that's 10. Man, that's 10 ways to ruin your life. Mm-hmm. And so that is a comprehensive starting point for anybody to go out and trash your life. If you want to trash your life, just go out and do the things that we just talked about. Mm-hmm. And I can almost guarantee, 100%, their life will be toast.
Right.
The good news is, it doesn't have to be that way.
Absolutely.
And I'm glad that Chris is here, because now we can fix and take my expertise on how to trash your life, and with his infinite wisdom, he's going to be able to tell us how to correct those problems. Sound good?
Sounds good.
All right. We'll be back after the break. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Hey, I'm Chris Whaley. I went from professional wrestling for 10 years, wrestling some of the biggest names in the business, 4 world champions. And I left the wrestling world to become a pastor. And I wrote a book about that transition, because when I became a pastor, I found out that there were some people being abused and people being mistreated. And I ended up dealing with some people more as a professional wrestler than I did as a pastor. And I wrote a book about that transition called The Masked Saint. And it's available along with my other book, which is Harold's Heavenly Christmas. If you like Christmas stories, you're going to love this one, and one day it's going to be a movie. And then my last book is Mr. President. Has 2 lives, a comedian and the World Heavyweight Wrestling Champion. And it is a great read.
Whoa, welcome back from wherever you went during the break. I know that you've been pondering the perplexity of what it means to ruin your life. I've been worried about it as well. So I'm glad that we're here for the second half of this, so Chris, we can kind of unravel the bad advice that we gave, because we don't want people to walk away from the show thinking we dispense bad advice. Right. We want to be the good advice guys. And so for us, let's go back through the same list we already talked about, and see if we can somehow unravel it. The first thing I said that we could do that would ruin your life is to assume your problems are unique. Mm-hmm. How do we not do that? How do we have to think about that differently?
Matter of fact, you are unique, just like everybody else. I think that it takes some strong thinking about that. And that's what I have to do with the difficulties that I face sometimes, where I tend to blow things up more than they should be. I have that good conversation with myself. I just sit down and look at it logically, and it's amazing when you look at it truthfully. It changes the dynamics very, very often. But I'm sure you have a great response to that too.
Well, no, I just think if I think we fall into a trap. If we think our problems are unique, we don't do anything about them because we don't think there's any place to go for help.
Right.
We think we're the only one who understands, and there's nobody else out there who has experienced the depth of the pain that we're in or whatever is going on. That's just not true. And I think that's one of the things that God gives us in the community of faith, as believers, as members of churches, as people who want to follow God. I mean, one of the greatest gifts we get is that gift of family to remind us that we're never alone.
Right.
And I think that's a big deal. And I think that goes a long way toward building your life back up.
Right.
Second thing we talked about is wait for someone to help you. Now, this was where we said, just don't do anything. Just don't act. Don't do anything. Just sit and just wait for something to happen.
No, I think you've got to be proactive on that one too. And if you're sitting out there and you're doing these things, or you just I'm going to wait until somebody steps up. I'm going to wait until this happens, or I'm going to wait until that happens, and all. I've got some news for you. It's not going to happen. So that's one that you can take to the bank. It's not going to happen. So instead of doing that and waiting for somebody to do what needs to be done, why don't you find somebody to help?
Yeah. They always say that one of the best ways to pull yourself out of a funk is to go find someone else to do something for, because you find people who are funkier than you. And I think also though, I think that you have to decide to take action. I love the word you use, proactive. I often tell people, get off your bad moody booty and get moving and do something. And even if you don't know what to do, some of the best spiritual advice I ever got, and again, this isn't real spiritual, and it didn't come from seminary. It came from someone who was just very wise. Fake it till you make it. I think sometimes you just need to do some things and just kind of plow on, and I think that goes a long way toward not getting caught in that trap.
I like that. Fake it till you make it.
Fake it till you make it.
I like that.
Third thing we said was cope with your pain in a way that adds to the pain. There's a lot of ways to say it. I'm a big advocate of banning boneheaded behavior. I think that people who just do dumb things on top of dumb things are just boneheaded, and I think we struggle with, all of us struggle with that.
Right.
Sometimes.
Right. This may not be for everyone, but it is for me. I have a friend that has been my friend since third grade. And besides my wife, there's nobody in the world, I think, besides God and my wife, there's nobody in the world that knows me better than this friend. We graduated from high school together. There's not a day that goes by that we don't talk. And so I think one of the ways that can help with that is having somebody that you could tell your deepest, darkest secrets to, and they're not going to, rat you out, and they're not going to condemn you. Yeah. But they're going to be somebody who, you got to have somebody to listen to you. So I think that's a big advocate for overcoming that.
And I think too, if people, all of us, would understand that as followers, as people, God gives us 2 ears and 1 mouth, and we ought to use them in that proportion. We ought to listen twice as much as we talk.
Right.
And I think that if in a real honest conversation with yourself, if you take a look and you don't have someone in your world that you have that kind of relationship with, you have to do something. You have to do something to make and build that kind of relationship. And it doesn't mean that the first person you meet, you tell them your entire life story.
No.
But you trust them a little, you cultivate and build a relationship.
Right.
Trust them with a few things, you're able to handle more.
Yeah,
and I think that matters.
And, one of the first things that I did whenever I went to a new church, I pastored 3 churches in my pastoral ministry, and one of the first things I did was to find a good Christian counselor, because I didn't have the answers for everybody, and some of them were too big for me.
Sure.
But I always wanted to give those people help and have someone that they could go to if there was, the deep, dark difficulties that they were dealing with. So it wouldn't be a bad idea to find a good Christian counselor, someone that you could go to. Right.
I agree. We talked about the fact that fixate on immediate comfort. In other words, take the short-term now
Right.
at the expense of what could be later. I think that for a lot of people, we live life like we're indestructible, or we are destructible, but there is no tomorrow. And it has nothing to do with worry or planning or goals or anything like that. But it has everything to do with just that focus of not being able to get out of your own way in this moment. And, doing the thing that will just not help you at all, and think that somehow it is going to help you. I mean, it comes down to choices, and it comes down to part of who do you talk to. But I also think that there's a moment where we have to lean back in. We're guys of faith. We talk about faith. We teach faith. I mean, I think this is where that spiritual depth in your life kicks in.
Right.
And if you don't have that spiritual depth, I think that you're in a little bit more trouble here, because you don't, it's tough to lean back into nothing.
Right.
And have nothing to catch you when you lean back. And so, my advice is going to be very pastoral at this point. Make sure that you're cultivating and feeding and fueling your life with the things of God and allowing that to make a difference.
Absolutely.
I think that matters.
Right.
I said, refuse to love others in order to protect your heart. Obviously, that'll trash your life.
Yeah. Even met a pastor one time when I wasn't in the ministry. My wife and I, when I was in professional wrestling, we were living in Central Florida and part of a great church. I love the pastor. Man, I've still got a Bible with notes from his messages and all, but he wouldn't go out to eat with people. He wouldn't go to their homes for a meal or stuff like that. He said he didn't want someone being jealous or whatever, and so he just became kind of reclusive, even as a pastor. And when you shut everybody out like that because you don't want to get hurt, you're the one that's going to end up getting hurt real bad, because you've got a hole that just never going to be filled.
Yeah. I mean, it says a lot about relationships and building relationships. And we're, I'm sure some other show down the road, far, far away from here, we're going to talk about the complexity of building relationships in a social media age.
Right.
But we're just not real good at that. And we were created to love.
Right.
I think we talked about it earlier. We're created to live in community. That's how God created us. And so if we don't do that, we get in trouble. Never learn to use money was another way that we said you could trash your life.
Say that one slow.
Never learn to use money. Man, you can't pay me enough to say that. But if you want to, I'll be happy to take it and learn to use that money. I would love to put that one into practice.
Yeah. Just letting that soak into our audience, listening to that. Yeah. I think that if you were listing it as far as most devastating, you think that would be high on the list?
It has to be high on the list.
That'd be real high.
It has to be high on the list, because a lot of times our self-worth, our self-image, our standard of living, our ability to do the things that we want to do or feel like we're supposed to do really is tied sometimes to our pocketbooks.
Right.
And if we don't get smart and wise with that, it really has the ability to really tank and immobilize you. It doesn't mean that the game's over, but it does mean that you kind of limit some of your choices.
Right.
And so, yeah, learning to do things well, learning to handle money well, really does matter.
It does.
What's it, make money work for you, don't work for money, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
there
so
you go.
make it work. Allow your past mistakes to forever define you.
Right.
How do you get past that?
Well, that's a good idea to read the Bible, because you'll find a lot of people in the Bible that made mistakes. You know, Adam and Eve. You mentioned God's children, Adam and Eve. They certainly, blew it, and so did so many other people. And the great thing is that we have a forgiving God.
Yeah.
He said if we confess your sins, He's faithful and just to forgive us and to cleanse us from all unrighteousness. So that one, I think we need to take more and more to the Lord.
Sure. Well, we also said a good way to trash your life is to refuse to forgive others.
Right.
And living with unforgiveness, and we were talking about that. I mean, how difficult that is, and how that keeps bringing us back over and over again, because that is a tragic mistake, right? I mean, if we don't forgive, it's a mistake. That mistake then defines our life, and so that was one of the things that we talked about. You don't want to forgive others, you're going to trash your life. I mean, you're going to ruin your life simply because it's what we're called to do. It's who we're called to be.
Isn't there a verse in there that says if we don't forgive someone, that God won't forgive us?
I think that would be in the Bible, yes. And it's not. I don't think we get to vote on that.
No.
I think the word is the word, right?
Right.
We also said one more thing, and we need to wrap this up. But choosing bitterness and refusing to be thankful and grateful will ruin your life. How do you flip flop that? How do you learn not to be bitter and be thankful?
You have grandkids? Mm-hmm. Yep, I got grandkids, and I love to eat dinner with them, because we always have them say the blessings. And one of them prayed, and he thanked God for his new toy, and he thanked God for he's only 6. Thank God for this, and thank God for that, and he got through, and my little granddaughter looked at him and said, "You didn't even thank him for the food." So I think we get a little childish, and I think we're the same way. If you thank God for everything that He did for you on a daily basis, you wouldn't have time to think about the negative stuff, I think.
And I think if you can live your life with gratitude, that certainly does go a long way toward balancing out some of the negative. So, for each of our listeners out there, we have told them how to ruin their life and then how to fix their life.
How to fix it, right.
And so we're grateful for you. We're glad that you spent this time with us here on The Clash. Chris, good to see you again. We're going to join you next time, so don't be a stranger. Come back and see us again. And between now and then,
don't tap out.